Alright, so hey everyone. Today I want to take a look at Warzone and its dead zones as well as its acceleration. So to start, by default, Warzone uses a 7% circular dead zone. Acceleration starts very slow, so it might be difficult to see. There are dead zone options. 7% is very small, but as you can see that Call of Duty's curves are typically very slow starting, so any kind of drift is pretty negligible for the most part. Call of Duty's been using circular dead zones since forever, since at least Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4, and we have full diagonal movement, as you can see here, right around the axes. And it's a little more difficult to tell horizontally, but that applies here too. Movement is a bit of a larger dead zone. It scales with the game's dead zone option, but it's always just a bit larger. The shaded region represents the sprint threshold. So if you click the sprint button below this, nothing will happen. If you're within it, you'll start sprinting, and if you fall without it, you'll stop sprinting. The extra exact threshold, these little flat parts are a little bit of liberty I took. These are basically the same as Call of Duty Black Ops 3, so I just drew them the same. But we have dead zone options, so I'm going to raise these and demonstrate the maximum. Unsurprisingly, it's accurate and it's still circular, so nothing too special about that. Movement is still slightly larger, and the sprint threshold is altered just slightly, but otherwise it's expected. So the full range of this slider is 0 to 40%, and that's a great range. This is a true 0% dead zone too, so you set 0, you get 0. Having a range from 0 to 40 really covers everyone's preference, but you can see that movement, there's still some dead zone applied. And this is probably the only problem with the dead zones themselves. Movement and aiming should have separate dead zones. It's possible someone has significant stick lean and gets either a lot of character drift or cursor drift on one and not the other, and they want to customize accordingly. So someone might want like a 30% movement dead zone, whereas they're fine with having a 5% aiming dead zone, and they can't do it with the current system. The next thing is there's some smoothing, but it seems only along the horizontal axis. So if I aim vertically, you can see when I peg the stick, it seems like a flat rate from beginning to end. But it's difficult to tell horizontally, but if you make really quick movements like this, they're kind of moving smaller than you'd expect for having a maximum turn rate of this. Smoothing is something that Call of Duty's always used, but it still doesn't have an option, and it should get one at some point, whether in this game or future Call of Duty games. It's nowhere near as bad as other games that use smoothing. It builds up very quickly, but it's something that can add some inconsistency into aiming, and shots would be tracking would be a little more predictable if you were able to disable this. One of the things I have an issue with is Call of Duty has traditionally lowered the vertical sensitivity compared to the horizontal, but even though we have modern Call of Duties have given us separate horizontal and vertical stick sensitivities, and you see I'm having the same right now. This is the vertical sensitivity. This is the horizontal sensitivity. These are not the same. They're not even remotely close. I have this problem with a lot of games. This is just misleading, and there's really no reason to do this. If you wanted to have the lower vertical sensitivity, just set the vertical sensitivity lower. This is just misleading, and um, on top of some players, preferring them to be the same, having them this way also skews diagonal movement towards the more sensitive axis. So if I try moving at 45 degrees, um, the cursor will move in a more shallow angle than that. So since this is horizontally biased, all your diagonals are flatter than you'd expect. So even though you have full diagonal movement, your diagonals are incorrect because they're all biased towards horizontal movements. Of course, you can try to adjust these to make these the same, but I don't know the exact ratio or how well you can approximate them to be even and get more correct diagonal movement. So this should be, at least in future games, ideally made the same, and they just set it the way they want. But if you set them the same, they should be the same. But probably what's most interesting to people is the curves, and I've tested these to the best of my ability. There might be some error as far as my tests, as well as I tried to wait a few seconds to make sure there's smoothing wouldn't have an effect on these curves. So starting with the standard curve, I'll show that on screen. This is exactly the same curve that I tested for Black Ops 3. It starts out very slow and then builds up faster at the edge of stick acceleration or stick movement. So again, this was the same curve I tested for Black Ops 3, so it is just ported and might be their just standard curve. This kind of curve starting slow is useful because Call of Duty has a ridiculously high sensitivity cap. It's actually a little over 1,000 degrees per second if you're playing at that. And having it start this low makes you able to make precise adjustments easily with a cap of that kind of cap. Where this gets interesting is testing linear. This is not a linear curve. I'll post this on the screen. This is a quadratic curve that I've tested. I don't know if there's something special going on. I don't think it's anything specific on my version because it is different. But this is a quadratic. So it's a full degree over what a linear curve is. To demonstrate, since this is quadratic, my anti-deadzone script can counter this pretty cleanly. So I'll do that, counter the curve, and so this is what a linear curve would look like with these kind of movements. You can see that it moves very fast early on, and then would build up linearly until you hit the maximum. So this starts very fast. I mean, this is also a good example of why mini games use kind of exponential curves, and that's because linear curves are kind of difficult to control at higher sensitivities compared to higher degree ones. But it does make sense that this option saying linear would give you a quadratic curve. That's strange, and there's not really a reason to have that happen. What I was most interested in was dynamic, because I didn't know what a reverse S-curve meant, and testing it to find out didn't really give me a specific answer. Showing that on screen shows that it starts out about as fast as a quadratic, linear in this game, but moves slower for longer, and then builds up to the same point. So I actually can't show too much of a difference. I mean, I've just been spinning around, but they're actually not terribly different options. So it's not like, at least with my tests. I mean, there could be some issue with my game or whatever, but at least as far as what I've tested, it's not like what you see from other Call of Duty YouTubers, where you have the standard be like a kind of standard exponential, a linear be the linear that you expect it to be, and the reverse S curve be the thing that starts out steep, then flattens out a bit, and then steepens back up. In that case, if it was really started faster than linear, that would be really rough to control if that were the case. To demonstrate that, like even take it further compared to the linear curve, this would be a root curve, so it's not wouldn't be like the reverse S curve in the sense that people have posted on, but this is a root curve. This would be a square root curve. The exact opposite of quadratic, and you can tell that it's kind of difficult to control. I can't even reliably get over this doorway. So yeah, curves starting out faster than linear are really rough, and you generally don't want them, especially if you're going to control play at a higher sensitivity. Now, generally, I'm against types for acceleration. It's nice that there's options with anything, but these options don't make too much of a difference. So it's not too much of a problem. But my problem with types is there's generally a jump in. If this was truly linear, this would be a considerable jump between standard, and if this was truly the S curve we thought, that'd be a considerable jump compared to linear. Having a slider would be better. For example, standard isn't a power function, but linear is, and you could easily have use a power function and have a slider controlling the exponent and get more control with that. You can approximate the standard and use linear in anything in between. You'd have more control with a single slider than these three presets. The only time I think types would really be good is if you had both. If you could be like, okay, I'm going to use a power function, an S curve, some circular function. Like you could have different actual functions, but you should have something that gives you more granular control, because as is, it would be a jump. Here, the way the curves are set up, there's actually kind of a minute difference between them. But yeah, okay, that's enough rambling for me. But that really covers it. Like, dead zones are great. The dead zone options are great. Even if I have problems with the acceleration options, it's nice that this is one of the first Call of Duties that have these options. So it's definitely an improvement for the series. But I mean, movement dead zones and camera dead zone should be separated. There should always be an option for smoothing. It's not as big a deal in Call of Duty as it is in other games, but it's something that does add inconsistency into the aiming that should be controllable. The vertical and horizontal sensitivity sliders should be equal. You shouldn't have to make weird ratios to get them even. You should be able to set them even and they'll be even, or set whatever ratio you want and get that ratio. In the future, I think that a single just exponent for a power function would cover this, if this is the kind of options that we're going to add. But if you're going to do types, make sure that the function is actually completely different, and there's an exponent or something that you can granularly control for better control. Now, I've been saying a lot of negative stuff. I mean, overall, Call of Duty feels pretty good to control. It's always had that kind of mantle since Call of Duty 4. And it's certainly good, but that doesn't mean there isn't improvements that could be made in the future. So, thanks for watching, and everyone, have a good rest of your day.